There's something he wanted to hear from you. Something that could have changed everything. But you didn't say it, not because you didn't feel it, but because you didn't know how to. Because deep down, you were tired of being the one who always had to bridge the distance. You remember that night, don't you? The quiet between you two wasn't peaceful. It was charged like a silence that carried 1,000 unsaid words. He sat across from you, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice that your eyes were searching for something. Anything. You wanted to say it then. The words that every man secretly aches to hear but never asks for. But you hesitated because you thought he should know already. Why should I say it if he's not showing it? That's the tragedy of love. It's not always lost in betrayal or distance. Sometimes it dies in silence. You see, most women are told to guard their hearts, to not give too much, to never let a man know how much he means. And while boundaries are essential, silence is not strength, it's armor. And armor, when worn too long, turns into isolation. So what is it, this one thing that men love to hear, but only 1% of women ever say? It's not, I love you. It's not, I miss you. It's not, you're amazing. It's something far more powerful. Something that reaches deep into a man's core, past his ego, past his logic, into that quiet, wounded place inside him where he hides all his fears of not being enough. It's this, I feel safe with you. When a man hears that not out of manipulation, not out of neediness, but out of genuine emotional truth, something inside him shifts. His defenses lower, his instincts calm. Because no matter how confident, successful, or masculine a man appears, there's one primal drive inside him that never changes, the desire to protect what he values. And when you tell him that you feel safe with him, you're not just complimenting his strength. You're telling him that his presence brings you peace. That he's not just wanted, but trusted. That, right there, is where love deepens. But so few women ever say it. Not because they don't want to, but because so many have never felt that kind of safety. There's a story I once heard about Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a woman of immense power, wisdom, and presence. But her marriage to Franklin D. Roosevelt was anything but simple. She knew about his affairs, his ambitions, his political life that often overshadowed her own needs. And yet, there was a moment late in their marriage when someone asked her what she admired most about him. She paused, smiled faintly, and said, "He made me feel that my thoughts mattered." She didn't say he made her feel adored, or beautiful, or cherished, though she was all those things to others. She said he made her feel safe enough to be seen. That's what emotional safety does. It creates space for truth. And the irony, men crave to provide that kind of safety, to feel like their presence brings you calm, that their love brings you grounding. But so often, they don't even know if they're succeeding because no one tells them. Think about the men you've known, the ones who seemed detached, distant, or emotionally guarded. How many of them were ever told, You make me feel safe. Not safe as in, you'll protect me from danger, but safe as in, I can be vulnerable around you. I can be messy, imperfect, real, and you won't turn away. That's the thing about men. They might not say it out loud, but they notice when you trust them, when you exhale around them, when your tone softens, when your laughter becomes unguarded. To a man who cares, your sense of safety becomes his quiet victory. But in today's dating world, we've confused independence with emotional distance. We've mistaken not needing a man for not letting one in. And while strength is beautiful, emotional intimacy requires risk. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Clara, strong, articulate, independent. She'd built a career, owned her own place, and had long since stopped believing in fairy tales. Her relationships never lasted more than a few months because each time a man got close, she felt herself pulling away. She thought, if I show him how much I care, he'll lose interest. So she played it cool. She never initiated texts, never complimented him too much, never let her emotions show. Until one evening, sitting across from a man who genuinely liked her, she saw that same flicker of doubt in his eyes. He didn't know where he stood with her, and for the first time, she said softly, "You make me feel really safe when I'm around you." The look on his face changed. It wasn't pride or arrogance. It was relief. He leaned in, smiled gently, and said, "I didn't know if you felt that way. I've been trying to make sure you do." That one sentence shifted everything between them. Because when a man feels trusted, he rises to it. He starts protecting the bond. He starts nurturing the connection. But here's the paradox. Women often don't say these words because they don't feel safe. And that's not their fault. Many have been burned by inconsistency, manipulation, or emotional neglect. They've been told, "You can trust me," by men who later disappeared without warning. So their guard became their identity. But the problem is, when you build walls to keep pain out, you also keep love out. Healing means learning to tell the difference between the men who deserve your vulnerability and the ones who don't. It's not about trusting too fast. It's about trusting wisely. There's a profound line from the philosopher Alain de Botton. He said, "Most of us will never feel loved because we are too scared to be known." Think about that. To be loved, you have to be seen, but being seen means being exposed. Your flaws, your fears, your needs. And yet, that's exactly what deep connection requires. So when a woman tells a man, "I feel safe with you," she's not just giving him validation. She's giving him permission. Permission to step into his role as a partner, not just a provider. Permission to drop his guard too. That's the magic of emotional reciprocity. When you show your softness, he finds his strength. But why only 1% of women say it? Because the rest have been conditioned to equate vulnerability with weakness. From an early age, women hear, "Don't be too available. Don't show your feelings first. Make him chase you." And while there's truth in not overinvesting too soon, There's also tragedy in never allowing real intimacy to bloom. You can't make someone chase love and feel emotionally safe at the same time. One is a game, the other is truth. And men, emotionally healthy, grounded men, they can feel the difference. They can sense when you're speaking from your heart versus from strategy. They crave authenticity the way your soul craves peace. So let's go deeper. What does emotional safety look like in practice? It looks like being able to disagree without fear of rejection. It's telling him, when you did that, it made me feel distant. Instead of pretending you're fine, it's being able to ask for clarity without sounding accusing. It's being vulnerable enough to say, I care about you, and that scares me. That kind of honesty, that kind of feminine courage, it moves men. Because contrary to popular belief, men are not afraid of emotion. They're afraid of disrespect, of criticism, of feeling like failures, but vulnerability spoken with warmth disarms all of that. When you say, you make me feel safe, it tells him, you're doing something right. And every man, deep down, wants to know that what he's doing matters. That's not ego. That's purpose. It reminds me of an old story from ancient Japan. There was a samurai warrior who fell in love with a poet. He was brave on the battlefield, but terrified of love, because his entire life had been about control. The poet once told him, you fight for honor, but when you love, you must surrender. He didn't understand then. But one day, as they watched the cherry blossoms fall, she turned to him and whispered, I feel safe when you're near. He said nothing. But from that day forward, he never went to battle the same way, because now his courage wasn't for glory. It was for love. That's what happens when a man feels emotionally safe. He becomes devoted. And yet, some women fear that saying such words will make them appear dependent. But dependence and connection are not the same. Dependence says, I can't live without you. Connection says, I choose to open my heart to you. When you express emotional truth, you're not losing power. You're wielding it consciously. Real feminine strength isn't about being unbothered. It's about being unafraid of your own tenderness. That's what draws emotionally mature men closer. Not games, not mystery, not withdrawal, but emotional authenticity wrapped in self-respect. In a world that teaches women to be hard, the bravest thing you can do is stay soft, not not desperate, soft, as in-grounded, graceful, emotionally honest. Because when you express that kind of truth, when you tell a man, you make me feel safe, what you're really saying is, you've earned my peace. And no man takes that lightly. What most people don't realize is that love isn't built on constant passion. It's built on peace. Peace in knowing you can be yourself. Peace in knowing your emotions are welcome. Peace in knowing you don't have to perform to be loved. And when you say those words, even once, even softly, you give love a place to rest. That's what men love to hear. That's what they long to feel. But only 1% of women are brave enough to say it, because it takes strength to trust again. It takes wisdom to know who deserves it. And it takes heart to speak love out loud when silence feels safer. You know what's beautiful? The moment you realize that safety in love doesn't come from perfection, it comes from presence. It's not about him saying the right thing every time or never making mistakes. It's about how both of you respond when things aren't perfect. Because emotional safety isn't built in peaceful moments. It's forged in the storm. It's in how he looks at you when you're upset, whether he listens or dismisses. It's in how you speak to him when you're frustrated, whether you attack or reveal. It's in the pause between reaction and response where both people decide, am I going to defend or am I going to connect? That's where safety is born. There's a story psychologists often tell about a study done with couples. The researchers observed thousands of micro interactions between partners. Tiny gestures, glances, comments, and discovered something astonishing. The difference between couples who stayed together and those who didn't wasn't grand romance or flawless communication. It was how they responded to each other's bids for connection. A bid is that small moment when your partner reaches out, not with words, but energy. When he shows you something funny on his phone, when you sigh and look away, hoping he'll notice. When he says, "Did you see that?" When you touch his hand as you talk. Those moments are invitations. Little doors that say, "Will you meet me here?" In the happiest couples, partners turned toward those bids 86% of the time. In the ones that fell apart, they turned away more often than not. That's emotional safety in motion. Not grand gestures, micro moments of attention. A man feels safe with a woman not when she agrees with him, but when she stays emotionally open during moments of tension. When she says, "I'm hurt," instead of "You're impossible." When she expresses, "I need reassurance," instead of pretending she doesn't care. When she lets him see the feeling instead of fighting the feeling. Because the truth is, men often shut down emotionally, not because they don't care, but because they fear they can't win. They think, no matter what I say, it won't be enough. They think, she's already decided I failed. So they retreat, not from you, but from the battlefield of constant misunderstanding. And when you tell him, "I feel safe with you," it's like taking the armor off both your hearts. It reminds him that you're not his opponent. You're his ally. Let's talk about something that changes everything in love: tone. Tone is the invisible language of trust. It's the difference between a conversation that heals and one that hardens. When a man hears judgment, he defends. When he hears disappointment, he withdraws. But when he hears vulnerability, genuine softness, something ancient inside him awakens. It's instinct, it's evolution. It's that primal drive that says, protect what's sacred. And your truth, your peace, that's sacred. So when you speak with calm honesty, when you say, "I love when you make me feel safe like that. Or, I feel really close to you. When you listen like that, you're not just giving a compliment. You're building an emotional blueprint. You're teaching him how to love you. And the right man wants to learn. But here's where many women struggle. How can I make him feel safe when I don't feel safe myself? That's the paradox of modern love. We want intimacy, but we're terrified of exposure. We want someone who can handle our truth, but we've never practiced showing it. We want emotional availability, but we live in an emotionally avoidant culture. So the real question isn't, how do I make him feel safe? It's, how do I create safety within myself so that love has space to breathe? Because emotional safety starts with self-regulation. When you can hold your emotions instead of being consumed by them. When you can express your needs without panic or pressure. When you can say, I'm upset, without making it an accusation. You become the calm in the storm. And that calmness, that grounded energy, is what draws men closer than any physical beauty ever could. There's a powerful moment in the film Before Midnight. It's late in the movie. The couple, Jesse and C.A. Line, are older now, years into their relationship. They've fought, said hurtful things, and everything feels fragile. And then, sitting on a terrace overlooking the sea, C.A. Line looks at him and says softly, I'm still here. It's not an apology. It's not a grand statement. It's presence. That's emotional safety in one line. I'm still here because safety isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about being able to trust that even when things get hard, love won't vanish. Men crave that kind of constancy, not just affection when things are easy, but steadiness when life gets messy. When you show that you can stay connected even in discomfort, it gives him the courage to do the same. That's how two people evolve. Not by avoiding conflict, but by staying emotionally available through it. And here's the secret. The moment you start embodying safety, you attract it. Because your energy teaches others how to treat you. When you're anxious and reactive, you draw in chaos because you're trying to soothe the uncertainty with intensity. When you're calm and grounded, you draw in maturity because your peace becomes magnetic. That's not about pretending to be unbothered. It's about actually cultivating inner stability. And that starts with learning to self-soothe. When your emotions rise, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what am I trying to protect right now? Often, our anger hides our fear of abandonment. Our silence hides our need to be understood. Our sarcasm hides our longing for reassurance. Once you name the truth, your reactions lose their power. That's when you can speak from love, not from fear. Let's return to something profound. The phrase itself. I feel safe with you. Do you know why it's so powerful? Because it's not about dependency. It's about reciprocity. You're acknowledging something he's earned. You're saying your actions, your presence, your consistency, they matter. You're affirming his masculinity not by idolizing it, but by appreciating its impact on your emotional world. And appreciation, not admiration, not flattery, is what fuels connection. Admiration says, "You're impressive." Appreciation says, "You affect me." The difference is intimacy. When you tell a man, "I appreciate how calm you are when I'm emotional," or "I love how you listen before reacting," you're reinforcing the exact behavior that builds trust. You're showing him that emotional safety is noticed, valued, and reciprocated. And that's how love grows, through acknowledgement, not assumption. Many relationships die not from betrayal, but from emotional neglect. Not the kind where one person stops caring, but the kind where both assume the other knows. We stop saying, "Thank you." We stop saying, "I appreciate that." We stop saying, "That made me feel seen." And love begins to starve quietly. Men, especially, often feel invisible emotionally. They're praised for providing, but rarely for how they make someone feel. When you tell a man he makes you feel safe, you're feeding something in him that the world often ignores: his emotional impact. Because despite the stereotypes, men long to matter emotionally. They want to be seen as protectors of your heart, not just your comfort. That's why those 6 words carry such weight. Let's step back for a moment. Imagine a man who's been through years of rejection, pressure, and silent expectation. He's been told to man up, to not show weakness, to just figure it out. He's been applauded for success, but rarely comforted for his struggles. He's been admired for his achievements, but not understood for his fears. Then one day, a woman looks at him, really looks at him, and says, "I feel safe with you." For a man who's been silently carrying the weight of having to be enough, those words are oxygen. They tell him that his presence brings peace, that his efforts matter, that he's not failing. And when a man feels emotionally safe, he becomes emotionally generous, because safety creates openness, and openness creates devotion. But let's be real. Not every man deserves that level of vulnerability. And this is where wisdom meets self-respect. Emotional safety should be earned, not assumed. You can't build intimacy on inconsistency. You can't give softness to someone who's careless with it. So how do you know if a man deserves your vulnerability? Watch what he does when you're not easy to love. When you're tired, emotional, or uncertain, does he lean in or pull away? When you express your needs, does he listen or label you? Too much. When you're honest about your feelings, does he respond with empathy or defensiveness? Those are your answers. A man who creates safety isn't perfect, but he's present. He doesn't always know what to say, but he stays. That's the difference between interest and intention. Interest wants the high of your affection. Intention wants the depth of your trust. There's a story from Greek mythology about Hephaestus, the god of the forge. He was not handsome like Apollo, nor charming like Hermes. He was rough, scarred, and quiet. But he had something the others didn't: steadiness. When Aphrodite was betrayed by lovers who were thrilling but unreliable, she returned to Hephaestus, not because he dazzled her, but because near him she could rest. He built her jewelry, armor, sanctuary, all from his forge of fire. He transformed pain into art, heat into safety. That's what emotionally safe men do. They don't compete for your attention, they build your peace. And here's the truth few talk about. When you make a man feel emotionally safe, you also raise the standard for what love means in his life. You teach him that connection can be calm. That love doesn't have to be chaos. That vulnerability isn't something to run from. It's something to return to. Because when a man meets a woman who speaks love with clarity, who expresses without fear, who appreciates without expectation, she becomes unforgettable, not because she's perfect, but because she's real. And real is rare. So many people think love dies from incompatibility. But most love stories end because neither person knew how to feel safe enough to stay open. So they shut down. They stop speaking truth. They start pretending everything's fine. And slowly, silence replaces intimacy. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can rewrite that story not by changing who you are, but by changing how you show up. When you learn to speak with emotional courage, to say the hard truths softly, you become the kind of woman who makes a man want to grow. Because emotional safety doesn't just heal, it inspires. It tells him, you can be better, and I'll see it when you are. That's not just love. That's leadership in love. You know what's ironic? The thing men love to hear most, that they make you feel safe, is also what you deserve to hear. You deserve a love that makes your nervous system relax. A love that doesn't feel like guessing, performing, or earning. A love where your truth doesn't cost you peace. And that love begins when you stop waiting for safety to be given and start embodying it yourself. Because the woman who feels safe within herself attracts a man who wants to keep her that way.